I mean, I think for me personally, the first week or two was actually pretty good. I'm going to be honest with you, because for the last year and a half, I've been working like a donkey. On some occasions, I've been working 7 days a week. And I always said around February, March, I'm going to have a little bit of a break. So in a funny way, this kind of came as a blessing in the beginning, because I was able to actually take a little bit of time off, wake up a little bit later than normal, watch my favorite shows on Netflix and things of that nature. I think it became a little bit more surreal after around 6 weeks, around 5, 6 weeks. That's when the reality started to kick in, and then you start thinking about financial problems, and you start to find that you're getting a little bit heavy down, and the waistline's getting a little bit bigger and things like that. I'm an avid gym goer, so the gym's being closed isn't really a great thing for me. So this is kind of the reality for a lot of people. Now, I know that I've spoken to many people who are going through real hardships at the moment. It's affecting many people differently, but some people are really suffering. And so I thought I'll start off this webinar by really talking about some of the negative ramifications of this lockdown. Well, these are some of the negative ramifications of lockdown. There's depression, the loneliness, weight gain, which is often associated with ordering in a lot of pizza and Just Eat and watching Netflix all day, and not really going to work as well, because believe it or not, we actually burn many calories when we're working, but we just don't realize it. So when you're on lockdown, obviously you're relatively immobile and you're not burning as many calories. I put infection risk here, and I put that because there's a very strong association between depression, immobility, and a compromised immune system, which I'm going to talk about in a little bit. But obviously, if your immune system is compromised, then you're more at risk of getting some kind of infection. So these are other things that you think about. And then obviously there's laziness and tiredness. Now, if you're not moving about as much as you usually should be, then obviously you're going to start to feel a little bit lazy, a little bit sluggish. And this can have a direct and indirect effect on your mental health. So, well, these are some of the negative ramifications of being on lockdown. What we do is we will focus on obvious solutions, which is more exercise. We want to boost the immune system, okay? We want to focus on diet and mental health, and I'm going to say social networking. I put friends on the screen, but to me, that social networking could be family. There's a lot of people who live on their own, and they may be going through some loneliness. As I said, that can impact your mental health. It can impact the immune system. So all these factors we need to take into consideration. Now, obviously, if you've been watching the news for the last 2 months, what's been dominating the media in the news?
The virus, vaccination,
coronavirus, this, infection, that, COVID-19, this, immunity, that. So I thought it would be a good idea to really say a few words about infection and the immune system, because although there's been a lot of talk about the immune system in the news, it's not that clear to everybody exactly how infection and immunity works and how it's related to this coronavirus. So first of all, what is an infection? What actually do we mean when we say somebody's had an infection? What does that mean?
Pathogens has entered their body.
Yeah, exactly. Is that Nikema?
Mm.
Nikema, yeah. So basically, from the moment that we were born, we've basically been at war. To be honest, we've been at war with an invisible enemy, and we call that invisible enemy pathogenic microorganisms. Now, pathogenic microorganisms, well, what is a microorganism? A microorganism essentially is a very small living thing that we can't see with the naked eye. There's many types of microorganisms, but the main ones we focus on is bacteria, viruses, and fungi, especially bacteria and viruses. So how it works is that there's literally trillions of these microorganisms everywhere we look. We can't see them, but they're around us. And the reason that we're still alive is because we have an immune system in place which will basically fight them off. Now, some of these bacteria and viruses are actually good for us, and I'm going to talk about that a little bit later. We call them the good bacteria. And without these good bacteria, we'd actually die. And most of these good bacteria are actually based in our gut. If you were to actually weigh all of the good bacteria and put it on a scale, it will weigh the same as your brain. It will weigh roughly 3 pounds. So that's how many bacteria we have. Some people say we've got more bacteria than cells in our body. So these bacteria are obviously very beneficial for us. And then there's the bacteria and viruses out there which don't really cause that much damage. And then there's a smaller amount of bacteria and viruses that are what we call pathogenic, and they can cause real damage. It can range from a cold or flu to a very serious illness, COVID-19 being the most popular in recent months. So What is the immune system? Can someone shout out what the immune system is?
First line of defense.
First line of defense, exactly. So what the immune system basically consists of an outer physical layer, like the skin, okay? The skin and the mucus that lines our respiratory system. That's also, yeah, so that also forms part of the immune system. So the lining of the respiratory tract, which is basically the nose. So you know in the nose, you've got mucus and mucus lining. All this basically helps to form a barrier against bacteria, viruses, and things of that nature. Even when you eat food, we have acid in our stomach. And if there's any bacteria in the food that we eat, the acid in our stomach will kill off those bacteria. So all this is very important for keeping us alive. Any questions so far? Is it all making sense?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, good. So if you've got such a strong immune system, that's the outer layer of the immune system, then what happens if these bacteria actually bypass the skin, if they bypass the mucous membrane, if they actually survive the acid in the stomach and enter the blood system? So basically what you have is you've got this war going on now. We've got the physical barriers to these bacteria, but sometimes, as I say, the skin sometimes doesn't stop all these bacteria and viruses from entering our body. So there's always going to be some bacteria and viruses that actually enter the body and enter the blood system. When that happens, we respond to that bacteria with an alert, so to speak, and the immune system becomes activated. So a good analogy is if you imagine that there's a policeman that's driving around the neighborhood on a Sunday evening, just to make sure that everything's okay. So he's on the beat basically, and he sees that there's a robbery going on and somebody's getting mugged. So the first thing he's going to do is he's going to call the police station, call for backup, and then he's going to go and arrest the mugger. Okay, and essentially that's what happens when you have a bacteria or virus infection. You have these white blood cells or macrophages, and they basically what they do is they patrol the body. They move around in the blood system, and if they see anything that shouldn't be there, like a bacteria or a virus, the first thing they do is that they put an alert on and they cause all this, what we call an inflammatory reaction, and they basically destroy this pathogen or bacteria. A good example is like if you catch a cold or flu, what's the first thing that happens?
Sore throat.
Sore throat, exactly. You produce more mucus. Yeah, you produce you get a runny nose. You start to produce all this phlegm, and all this is basically an attempt to get rid of this virus, this bacterium. Okay, and that's the first line of defense. Also, your body temperature goes up. You get a fever, and the reason you get a fever, the reason your temperature goes up is because it's trying to create a very unnatural environment for this pathogen, this bacteria. And so it's really the body's trying to kill off this bacteria. Now, what happens after that is that you start to develop what we call antibodies, okay? And this takes around a few days to a week to happen. And the antibodies is a bit like, if you go back to that police analogy, the policeman's caught the mugger, okay? He's taken him, or the robber, he's taken him to the police station and he's done a mug shot, he's taken fingerprints, and he's given this guy a criminal record. So if this guy was to reoffend again later on, he's easy to identify. And that's exactly what happens in the immune system as well. So if you catch a cold or an influenza, a flu virus, what happens is that you have what we call a targeted response. And it usually takes a few days to a week, sometimes more than a week, to develop what we call antibodies. And these antibodies basically specifically identify this one particular virus, and it destroys that virus, and it also remembers that virus. So if that virus comes back later on, a few weeks or a few months from now, the body can identify it, kill it off really quickly before it causes any symptoms. That's why people who get a flu, they don't go through the same symptoms if they were to be exposed to that flu virus again later on. Is that all making sense to everybody?
Yeah, it is, Jonathan. Thank you.
So how's that all related to COVID-19?
Well, it's a bad flu, isn't it? COVID-19.
Yeah, basically that's it. The problem is that the problem is that we don't really understand the virus that well, and so what we're trying to do at the moment is trying to make a vaccine. Now, what is a vaccine? Who knows what a vaccine is?
Is it like something that, I don't know, actually, no, it's something that's trying to get rid of the illness. Is it like some type of medication or something, no?
Yeah, it's basically what it is. Leukemia. Is leukemia there?
Yeah.
Yeah, Nikima, you know what a vaccine is, don't you?
Yeah, it's basically when they inject you with like a weakened form of that pathogen so your body can build up antibodies to it.
Exactly. So that's exactly what it is. Basically, it's the offending virus. What they do is they take bits of that virus, or they sometimes even take the dead virus, and they put that inside your body. And the idea is that it will elicit an immune response, but it won't cause pathology. In other words, that's a fancy way of saying that you will develop antibodies that will be able to target that particular that particular virus or bacteria should the real deal be encountered. So if you have a flu vaccine, for example, you're going to have this dead organism that's going to be injected into your body. And because it's dead, it won't cause any infection. But you will be able to develop antibodies that would recognize the real thing should it occur. So you won't experience all these horrible the blocked nose and all that kind of thing that's associated with flu should you encounter the real thing later on. Have I explained that properly?
Yeah, I understand
Yeah,
that. It
it's
makes
all
sense.
making sense.
Yeah.
19 situation is that it's a very new virus and we just don't know enough about it. Every day we're learning something new. All we can do is basically make sure that our immune system is strong enough, and I would say listen to the government advice to some degree. Social isolation obviously will reduce the risk of us contracting the virus, but at the moment there's no vaccine for it, and I think that's an issue obviously that's causing a lot of worry for people. I was reading the other day that, you know, that the vaccine that they want to create for the COVID-19 is going to basically center around something called the S protein. And I won't go into too much details, but the COVID-19 has something called the S protein, which is quite unique to it. And this S protein can actually link to the human cells. And that's when it causes the problems, death and respiratory problems and all that. So what they want to do is make a vaccine which will target the S protein and prevent it from bonding to the human cells. But this is something that's people haven't actually worked it out yet. Then you have got to do trials and things like that. So check my comments. There we go. So what about smallpox?
So yeah, so what about smallpox, John?
What about smallpox? Same thing. Yeah, same thing. I mean, what we need. That's why we have vaccines, basically, to prevent us from experiencing all these horrible viruses. The complications associated with all of these horrible viruses. We have vaccines, and we have an adaptive immune system which develops over time. It's not perfect for everything, but like, for example, HIV and things like that. But obviously, the vast majority of infections that we come across, we over time we will develop antibodies for them. And so that's how it works. Is that all making sense? I don't really want to spend all day talking about
Jonathan?
Hello?
Yeah, Jonathan, that makes sense, actually. I was just thinking,
Mm.
when somebody spoke about smallpox,
Mm.
they've got a vaccine for that, though, haven't they?
Yeah.
And also, same like with measles as well. We when we're younger, we take that vaccine for measles. People still can get it, but they don't die from it. That's basically what happens. Isn't
That's
it?
the point. That's the point. You know, I mean, that's always been a long argument. The MMR vaccine, is it there's potential complications. That's the other thing with vaccines. There's some of them they do elicit unpredictable reactions in some people.
Yeah.
So
Like side
you've got to
effects.
weigh it up and whether it's worth taking it or not. And that's going to be very much an individual decision. But, you know, I'm just giving like an overview of how the immune system works. I don't really want to be talking about the immune system all day because there's so much to cover. But does it make sense though, what I was saying?
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah.
That makes sense. Okay. If there's any questions, just ask me. That's fine. I'm glad you asked me about smallpox and stuff. So that brings us to risk factors. Now, I'm sure you've heard this in the media. Who are the most risky? Or should we phrase that? Who are the people out there who are at most risk of getting infections? The results are, the answers are on the screen, by the way.
Elderly.
Like an ethnic minority.
So we got basically people who have a potentially compromised immune system, because it really is all about the immune system, to be honest with you. So
People that are
as you get
overweight
older,
as well. People that are overweight.
absolutely, yeah.
Yeah. Because
Absolutely.
I think
And
as well, it's people with being overweight. There's a lot of underlying issues that people don't realise they have when you're overweight, because your organs are working harder because of the fat surrounding the organs as well.
Totally. Also, you've got something called cortisol, which I'm going to talk about a bit later on. Cortisol is associated with weight gain and stress, and it has an indirect effect on the immune system. In other words, the more cortisol that you produce over a long time period, the weaker your immune system. So we do really, what we really want to do is we want to focus on the people who are at risk of catching infection. And the risk factors really are going to be limited to elderly people, because as they get older, the immune system becomes less efficient, I should say. Smokers, for obvious reasons, people who are very stressed out and depressed, people who don't sleep very much. And all these I'm going to be going over in the next hour or so. So I'm just going to give you an overview.
Jonathan, one thing is, at the moment, when all this is over, if they find out the health conditions of all the people who've died, which they're not doing, then they can identify the more people more at risk. At the moment, they just say elderly, underlying health conditions, but I do know of people who are smokers and struggling for their life.
What, sorry? So I'll speak again.
They smoke, their lungs are compromised.
Absolutely.
Or they've got heart conditions as well, because they're not getting the air into their lungs as well.
Absolutely, yeah, totally, yeah.
I believe it's a big issue, but they're not telling people this. So apart from being elderly and being weak, but it is a chronic lung disease, and that if they really get ill, they struggle to get better because their lungs aren't strong in the first place.
Absolutely, and that's what I'm going to be talking about. Really, we're going to be focusing on people who, because if you think about it, most people have an effective immune system. Most people's immune system is okay, but then there are people, as I said, who have lung conditions. COPD is a very big one. Asthma, even. These are all going to increase the chance, especially with this COVID situation. It's going to increase the chance of you suffering symptoms, not necessarily dying, but suffering symptoms. And so what we want to do, and what I'm going to be talking about today, is how we can actually boost the immune system. Even if you are asthmatic, even if you have COPD, we want to increase the chance of, or should I say, reduce the incidence of the symptoms by boosting the immune system. And that's really what I'm going to be talking about today. So let's move on. Any other questions, or can I move on?
Yes, please.
Yep, okay. So the first thing I'm going to be talking about is diet. Now, diet is a massive thing that a lot of people don't really focus on these days. So these are 10 ways that you can improve your diet in order to not only boost your immune system, but also increase your health and general fitness, which is also very important for the immune system. And the first thing I'm going to talk about is plant foods, plant-based foods. Okay. And if you've got your phone, you can just take a screenshot of these foods. These are some of just 10 of the healthiest and most commercially viable plant-based foods out there. And what I'm going to do now is I'm going to put a link in the chat. Did you get that link? Has everyone got that link?
Yeah.
Yeah? I've just put a link on the group chat.
Yeah, I've got it, Jonathan.
Yeah.
Yes, thank you, Jonathan.
Okay, so that's basically a link to a talk that I did about plant-based foods. I don't want to be talking about it now because the talk goes on for an hour. So in your free time, you can check out that video. But basically what I did in that video was I talk about some of the 10 best plant-based foods out there and why they're beneficial. But, you know, as I said, this is interactive. So I want you to tell me, why do you think these plant-based foods are good for us?
Because we've only got one ingredient in them. So for example,
millions of ingredients.
As in like kale, it's just kale, isn't it? Broccoli,
yeah,
just
but
broccoli.
kale,
it's not processed at all. It comes from the grounds. It's not messed about with. It's natural.
Absolutely.
It's from the earth. Absolutely.
Well, yeah, exactly. What it is with all these, and there's millions. Every time I do a talk about plant-based foods, there's always someone says, "Well, what about carrots? What about sweet potatoes?" There's thousands of brilliant plant-based foods. I've only literally listed 10 of them. The reason I listed these particular 10 is because they're quite easy to get hold of. There are others which you can't necessarily get from Tesco's and stuff. But the one thing about all of these 10 foods that I've put down here is that they're very, very rich in antioxidants. Now, who knows what antioxidants are? Anybody who knows what antioxidants are?
I've heard of it, but I'm not sure what it is. I've heard of it.
Antioxidants. Okay. Who's heard of free radicals?
No, I haven't heard of that. No.
Okay. Free radicals are like little mini machine guns, okay? And they basically, all they do is they destroy cells. They're no good for us. And, or to be technical about it, they're what we call ionized atoms and molecules. So they're charged molecules, charged compounds. And what they do is they go around and destroy cells. People who smoke, they produce a lot of free radicals. People who eat a lot of processed foods produce a lot of free radicals. Now, what free radicals do is they increase the chance of you getting cancer, heart disease, premature aging, all these things. And what antioxidants do is antioxidants wipe out these free radicals. Okay, so they actually neutralize them and wipe them out. Now, all of these plant-based foods are full to the brim of antioxidants, which is absolutely brilliant because it will not only make you look younger, it will reduce the chance of cancer, reduce the chance of any heart disease, atherosclerosis, all these things. So that's one thing about these foods. The other thing is that they're rich in fiber. Now, fiber is really good for a number of reasons. If you're on a diet, it will help you keep full longer. Most of these foods are low in calories, so you can eat loads of them and not gain weight and yet still feel full up. So as a result, you're eating fewer calories, hence to lose weight if that's what you want to do. They're rich, and also fiber is very good for the good bacteria. Remember I mentioned earlier about good bacteria? Who remembers that? Remember that? Okay, so the good
Yes, I
Yeah.
remember.
So the good bacteria, most of them reside in the gut, and I'm going to go over that in a bit. But basically, fiber is food for the good bacteria. Okay, it helps keep them alive and thrive and survive. All of these foods are very rich in vitamins and minerals, and you all know that vitamins and minerals are good for you. As I said, if you've got time, I'll talk about it in a lot of detail in the video. But I mean, I literally can spend an hour talking about this stuff, but I'm not going to. And the point being that if you add this to your shopping list, it's going to definitely reduce the chance of any illness in the future. Okay. Any questions so far? You know, I would say that I would suggest having these foods every day, but even if you were to have just half, it will make a massive difference to you and boost the immune system as well. That's the other thing. All of these plant-based foods will actually improve the efficacy of the immune system.
You don't recommend much fruit in that. Is that because it's high in sugar?
Sorry, say that again.
You haven't recommended much fruit in that list. No fruit.
I know, remember what I said. Remember what I said 10 minutes ago. I'm only giving 10 examples. There's thousands of examples, but these are just 10. I mean, I wish I can give you more, but I just think 10 is a good start number. Don't feel limited to just these 10. You know, there's loads of other ones which I haven't put on here, but these 10 are very, very good to start off with. If you just wanted 10 foods to add to your list, this is a good starting point. Okay, so where was I? So that's plant-based foods. Now, I know that there's someone on here who fasts quite a lot. I know who that is as well. It's Wendy, isn't it? And also, yes, also Autumn fasts a hell of a lot as well.
3 times a week at the moment.
How many?
Oh, well done.
3 times a week at the moment, Monday, Wednesday and Friday.
How long do you fast for?
Oh, it's 24 hours.
24-hour fast. Wow.
Wow, that's really good.
That's amazing.
No, I do have a few calories. It's not totally nothing. It's the Michael Mosley, the 5-2 kind of thing, but just a little few calories.
So fasting, basically, technically fasting means consuming no calories, but a lot of the diets, as you mentioned, does involve consuming some calories, which is fine. The point of fasting, in fact, let me ask you, what is the point of fasting? Why do people fast?
I fast. I think it's good for it's a number of reasons. It's good for lowering blood pressure. It's good for your metabolism, diabetes. There's a number of reasons, really. It clears the digestive system.
Absolutely.
Boosts your immunity. I think it boosts your immunity as well.
Yeah, it does. Yeah.
I think it's also good for improving your willpower, because that's all we've got. Yeah,
that's very true. And also, it's mentioned in the Bible 40 times.
Yeah, yes. Absolutely.
That's a good point.
I mean, at the moment, the Muslims are going through Ramadan, so you know, there's definitely a spiritual relevance. Now,
yeah, it makes you be grateful. Like, I think in this world that we live in now, everything's so easily accessed, and we have a fridge, and it's like you can always get food, especially in the Western world. And obviously, I know people, you know, are struggling with poverty over here. Let's not forget that. But it just makes you more grateful, like you said, Jonathan. Spiritually, it's good for you as well, and to know that, you know, it's everything that you makes you more aware of, like, what you should be grateful for as well.
Totally. And so what I'm going to do is, yeah, you're totally right, 100%. And I think the popular ones that you may have heard of is the Lean Gains diet. Nothing to do with me. I'm Lean Gains UK, by the way. But there's this guy called Martin Began who he came up with a diet called the Lean Gains diet, whereby you fast 16 hours and you have an 8-hour feeding window. So basically you skip dinner and skip breakfast. That's quite a popular one. Then there's a 24-hour one, which Autumn was on about earlier, or Eat, Stop, Eat. which is another word for it. There's a 5-2 diet where you fast during the week and eat normally during the weekend. Who's heard of the warrior diet? Heard that one?
Is that like 20 hours or something?
No, it's when you eat one meal a day at night time.
Oh yeah,
and,
yeah.
The guy was a guy called Ori Hofmeckler. He wrote a bestseller, and basically the book was just saying eat at nighttime, and that's about it really. But essentially it's all about intermittent fasting. So I'm going to just say a few words about the benefits, which you've kind of covered already. But obviously, you're eating fewer calories, you get weight loss. Now, what a lot of people don't know about is a hormone called ghrelin. Who's heard of ghrelin?
No.
No.
Ghrelin. It's a fascinating hormone, and it's what we call the hunger hormone. There's actually another one called cholecystokinin, but ghrelin is the one I'm going to be talking about now. Ghrelin, if you eat every single day at 6 o'clock in the morning for around 2 weeks, you know what will happen at 5:30 the following day?
No, Jonathan. You're
going to start to feel hungry.
Yeah, I mean, that's what I agree with that, Jonathan, because when I started my intermittent fasting, I've always been brought up to eat breakfast ever since I was a child. And it's only like I say 3 years ago that I stopped eating breakfast. Well, breakfast is abbreviation for breaking the fast. Exactly, so breakfast doesn't necessarily have to mean morning. So I try not to eat my first meal till after midday every day, really. But yeah, it is. I mean, breakfast, you can eat it whatever time you want to. It doesn't have to be morning. This is something that was, drilled into us, especially by food companies, about things like cereals and breakfast bars. Let's eat breakfast in the morning. No, breakfast can be eaten at 1 o'clock if you want it to be. A lot of people don't actually like breakfast either. I mean, I was always forced to eat breakfast as a child before I went to school. Big bowl of cornflakes.
Exactly, yeah. We get into the habit of eating a particular way, and there's a hormone called ghrelin, and ghrelin is quite interesting because ghrelin is released around 15 to 20 minutes before we eat. So if you eat, for example, if you eat every single day at 6 o'clock in the morning, and what's going to happen is around 5:30, you're going to get a boost in ghrelin release. Now, ghrelin is a hunger hormone, so ghrelin sends signals to the brain saying, "I'm hungry, I'm hungry, I'm hungry." So at 5:30, you're going to start to feel hungry. At 6 o'clock, you're going to eat. Now, the opposite is true too. If you decide to stop eating at 6 o'clock in the morning every day, you know what's going to happen? Have a guess.
The ghrelin won't be released? I don't know.
Exactly. You produce less ghrelin, which means you won't feel hungry anymore. So that's why whenever you decide to fast, for the first day or two, it might be quite difficult. You might go through hunger pangs, but after around 2 or 3 days, your body will get used to producing less ghrelin, hence you won't feel hungry. And that's why a lot of people say that fasting is the most effective way of...
I've got a question for you, Jonathan.
Yeah.
With regards to fasting, I do fasting, but I do change it up. I might do 16, 16-8, I might do 24, I might do warrior. Will that affect my metabolism at all?
Yes, it will. It will. If you fast too frequently, your metabolism will drop.
Yeah.
With fasting, fasting is excellent. I'm going to talk about that. I'll talk about the benefits of fasting first. So we've got the weight loss. You get fewer hunger pangs. Who knows about autophagy? Who's heard of the term autophagy?
Yeah, it's about cell repair, is it?
Exactly, yeah. So when you fast...
It's about the cells eating the good cells eating the bad cells or something, I think. I'm not sure.
Yeah, exactly. Basically, what's happening is but what happens is when you're fasting, your body is giving itself a spring clean. There's loads of dead cells running around in your body. Dead cells, dying cells, cells that really don't have any purpose. And what the body does is it tries to get rid of these dead cells because there's no point having it. Now, autophagy is at its best when you fast. So that's one thing. The other thing is that there's a survival of the fittest thing going on as well with the white cells. So the white cells, which is involved directly in the immune system, they become more efficient and more effective when you fast. So these white cells, which basically destroy bacteria and viruses, they become super, super strong. They become supermen, basically, when you fast. And the weaker versions of the white cells become eliminated through something called apoptosis, which is suicide. So in other words, some of the weaker cells commit suicide. They literally die. They literally kill themselves. And the immune system becomes more effective when you fast. Is there any benefit to stop eating before 6 p.m. at night? Yes, there is. I mean, so how it works is you can fast up to 72 hours without losing muscle. And the main concern that most people have, especially people who train a lot, is they don't want to lose muscle. Now, when you don't eat, you're going to lose muscle, whether you like it or not. But all the science says that you can fast for 72 hours and experience all the benefits for up to 72 hours. After that, you'll start to lose muscle, things like that. Your metabolic rate will start to drop quite significantly after that point. So why is it that you get more energy when you're not eating? Because most people think the opposite. Most people think, I'm gonna eat in order to get the energy. But for up to 3 days, your energy levels can go right through the roof and you don't eat anything. And the reason is because, who's heard of growth hormone? Anybody heard of growth hormone?
Yeah.
Okay, growth hormone is, wait a minute, if you do 5-2 fasting, should you fast for 2 consecutive days, or can you spread it out?
Okay,
Is it Michael? Yeah, was it, did you mention Mike Mosley?
Yeah, I did. He's 5'2".
Yeah.
I think it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter if
Yeah.
you do 2 consecutive days. He recommends 2 together is better than having them apart. But I don't have them directly together.
Is it the 2 days that you don't eat or the 2 days you do eat?
You eat for 5 days normally. You fast for 2 days.
Okay, sorry, I got that wrong. So yeah, you fast for 2 days.
I think that the Michael Mosley, it's not a fast. It's just a significantly reduced intake.
Okay.
Yeah, he
it's
calls
something like
it
400 calories.
He calls it intermittent fasting, and that's what he's even done a TV program. But you are right,
I saw it.
Significantly, just significantly reduced.
Yeah.
Okay.
But it's not a complete fast.
No, it's not.
It is a breakfast and a light evening meal.
Okay. So the idea really is that when you fast, when you have a complete fast, if you have no calories whatsoever, just literally tea with stevia and water, for example, for up to 72 hours, the longer you do that, the more efficient your immune system becomes. And I've done a 3-day fast in the past, which is very difficult. You have to kind of.
I've done it too, and it wasn't very nice. I struggled. Yeah, it's difficult to do that.
But how do you feel at the end of it?
Yeah, I did. Do you know what? I felt really good, but I couldn't do it again. I definitely. It's difficult. You can't work or anything. You have to be on my days off, and it's the sleeping I found very difficult. I couldn't sleep much.
I think you have to wean yourself up to it. I don't think you can just go from eating.
But you know what? I actually didn't. It was like my sister. We decided it was after New Year, and we just decided to do it. So we didn't actually build ourselves up to it. I think, we just thought, let's just do it, and we did, and it was so difficult. I don't know how. Looking back in it, this is like 2 years ago. I don't know how I did it. I really don't. But you know what? It's got me to that mindset. If I did that, I could do anything.
Absolutely. I think. I mean, when I did it, I started off with a 16/8, and then I went to 24. I did 24 hours twice a month, and then I did a 48-hour around a month after. No, a few weeks after that, and then literally the following week I did 72 hours, which I wouldn't advise that to people who are training regularly, because it can actually affect your workouts and things like that.
Yeah, you have to kind of meditate and relax at the same time as well. You can't. I couldn't do much at all. I had to just take it easy. Really, it was just literally just clear my mind, my body, and my soul. I don't know, but it's difficult. Yeah,
it's very difficult. But I think the benefit you get from that, and the benefit I got, is that you just feel. On one level, you feel a little bit not as strong as normal, but another level, you feel like Superman. And a lot of that comes down to, and a lot of that comes down to you produce a hell of a lot of growth hormone. Growth hormone is good at burning fat, maintaining muscle, and also there's something called catecholamines, which is associated with energy. So you produce more of these. You basically produce more energy when you're not eating for a short length of time. If you do it too often, then it's the opposite effect. But that's why it says on the bottom of the screen, it says boost energy. You do produce more energy. So in answer to your question, the longer you fast, the stronger your immune system, the more energy you have, and the more weight you're obviously going to lose. But up until 72 hours after that, it's going to have a negative effect on your muscle, and you start to lose muscle, and you will start to feel weaker after that. So most people say 3 days maximum at one time is enough for fasting. Now, I'm going to move on to fat. Now, you've obviously heard in the past, if you were born in the 70s and lived through the 80s, or if you're born in the 60s and lived through the 80s, you probably know about this whole fad diet thing going on with low-fat diets. In the 80s, it was very popular to have low-fat diets. And that's really when it started, the late 70s, 80s. And as a result of that, 10, 15, 20 years later, we had the biggest epidemic of obesity, coronary heart disease, diabetes, and all these things. And in more recent years, we realized that actually having a low-fat diet isn't necessarily a good thing for us. So I'm just going to touch on that. So what's so good about fat? Why do we need fat in our diets? And is there such thing as bad fat?
Yeah, there is.
There is, yeah. Okay. So what is bad fat?
Bad fat's processed fat, isn't it? Isn't it saturated fat? Maybe, I don't know.
Trans fats mainly.
Trans fat,
so
yeah.
Trans fats is a fancy name of, these are fats that are not very easy to break down by the body. They're kind of unnatural. Can people with type 2 diabetes fast? Yes. Sorry, is that Daryl? Yeah, she just said, can people with type 2 diabetes fast? Absolutely, yes. But I would suggest weaning yourself into the fast. Don't do it all one go, because obviously, especially if you're taking insulin, what's insulin going to do? Insulin is going to reduce your blood glucose levels. I would suggest seeing a doctor first, because there's a lot of potential complications. I had a patient of mine actually had a diabetic coma, literally had a diabetic coma in the chair. Diabetic coma is when your blood sugar goes right down. And that's because they didn't eat for something like 16 hours. So I would suggest, yes, fasting is great. If you see a doctor first, get some advice from a GP. Low-fat products are usually replaced with extra sugar. I need a lot of full-fat stuff. Totally. I'm going to be talking about that in a minute, Anne. Can you hear me okay, Anne? Just send me a message that you can hear me, Anne.
Yeah, hi. Yeah, I can hear you.
Okay, good. So fat is fat. There's good fat and bad fat. Bad fat is anything that can't be broken down easily, and we often associate that with trans fats. You tend to find it in a lot of processed foods, and the body doesn't recognize it, which is why it causes so much damage. So anything like junk food, crisps, pizza, all that kind of thing, obviously, that's try to minimize how much of that you eat. The good fats, avocados, if you're not vegan, fish, olive oil, cod liver, all this, very good sources of fat. Now, what's the function of fat? Fat is obviously good for energy storage, as we all know, but it also helps to make our nerves, our brain. It makes cells. Every single cell in the body consists of what we call a phospholipid, basically lipid. Basically, every cell in the body contains fat. There are hormones such as testosterone. Now, testosterone, is that a good thing or a bad thing? So testosterone is a good thing for muscle growth especially. And did you know that testosterone is derived from cholesterol? Do you know that?
No.
So basically, having some saturated fats is actually good for testosterone production. And that's why a lot of people who went on a low-fat diet back in the 80s and 70s, they started to experience a hell of a lot of muscle loss because they weren't producing enough testosterone. So having saturated fats is actually not a bad thing. You just don't want to have too much of it. But the one that I really want to talk about is omega-3s. Now, omega-3, this is a very, very complicated issue, and I'm going to try to simplify it in the next slide. So omega-3s, what are omega-3s? Who's heard of omega-3s, first of all?
Yeah, I've heard of it.
Yeah? Okay.
No, I haven't heard of it.
Omega-3s?
I've never heard the word even. Can you?
Omega-3s. Okay. So basically what you have is there's certain types of fats that are really important to eat, and they're called omega-3s and omega-6s. We call them essential fats. How fat works is that you can make fats without eating fats, okay? So if you eat loads of calories, then the body starts to make fat.
Are you talking about omega-3 and omega-6?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
I misheard you. Sorry.
Oh, sorry, yeah. Omega-3, omega-6s. So certain types of foods only come with fat. So what I'm really trying to say is that if you were to eat, let's say you had no fat in your diet, you just ate carbohydrates and protein, your body can actually make fat, and that fat can be used for vital functions. But there's certain types of fat that have to be consumed from fat. One example of that is omega-3 and omega-6s. Now, omega-6s, we tend to eat a lot of omega-6s, but most people, or I shouldn't say most people, a lot of people are deficient in omega-3s. Now, you've got to pay attention to this bit because a lot of people get confused at this. There's 3 types of omega-3s. There's alpha-linoleic acid, or ALA. There's eicosapentaenoic acid, or EPA, and then there's docosahexaenoic acid, or DHA. Now, are you familiar with any of those names? ALA, EPA, DHA? Yeah?
No.
I know that some people are, but so there are a lot of vegans, not all vegans, but a lot of vegans don't get enough of the EPA and DHA. Okay. Now, most of the health benefits in human beings and mammals come from EPA and DHA. EPA and DHA basically support brain and heart function. They got so many benefits. I don't even have time to go into it, but they reduce chronic inflammation. They improve vision. They improve mood. They improve brain function. All of this. And EPA and DHA can only come from fish and fish oils and certain types of seaweed and algae. So if you're vegan, a lot of vegans don't get enough of the EPA and DHA, and that's where 99% of the health benefits come from. But anyway, yeah, a lot of vegans eat enough ALA, and ALA is a type of omega-3 which the body cannot convert to EPA and DHA. But ALA does not have that many health benefits relative to EPA and DHA. So what I'm trying to say is that a lot of vegans and vegetarians tend not to eat enough or consume enough EPA and DHA, which is why they can benefit from a supplement from any health store.
If we wanted, Jonathan, if we wanted to get it in our diet, in our natural diet, how would we? What would we have to eat? As you know, I'm a vegan, to get that omega-3 in my diet every day.
That's the thing. It's not really, unless you eat seaweed and algae, you're going to have trouble finding it in the diet. Now, there are some, well, what's happened in recent years is they've started to add it to commercial foods. So they fortify certain types of foods, but you can't really rely on that because we don't know how much they're adding, and we don't even know necessarily what kind of foods they're adding it to. So I would always say, to be on the safe side, there's no harm taking a little bit more than you should. So I'll always say, on the safe side, why not just supplement vegan algae supplement every day? Okay. There's no harm in it. You might as well. It's not that expensive either. But the benefits are countless. And so obviously, if you're not vegan, then I would say eat more fish or take some cod liver oil every day.
Okay.
Cod liver oil. Now, that kind of brings me on to, I'm going to cover that a bit later on, vitamin D as well. I'll talk about that a bit later. But yeah, so that's the omega-3. Any questions so far?
No.
No, thank you.
I sprinkle flaxseed on my breakfast. Yeah, this is the thing. Flaxseed. Now, flaxseed contains the ALA. Okay, so that's where a lot of people get confused. A very common source of omega-3s for vegans is flax seeds, walnuts, chia seeds, things like that. The problem is that they don't have the EPA and DHA. They just got the ALA. So remember, there's 3 types of omega-3s. The ones that we really, really, really want is the EPA and DHA. But you don't find that in flaxseed. You find the ALA, and the ALA doesn't really do that much for the body. It's okay. It's got a few benefits, but it's nothing compared to the benefits of the EPA and the DHA. So I just got a question saying flaxseed, about flaxseed. And flaxseed is great, but you do still want those supplements. If you are vegan, you want to definitely take those algae supplements. Or at the very least is actually get a blood test, make sure that you've got enough in your system. Is that okay? Can I move on? Yes, no?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. Now, remember I said earlier about good bacteria and bad bacteria? Remember I said that?
Yeah.
Yep, okay. So we've got bacteria in our body, which we have a symbiotic relationship with these bacteria, which basically means that all bacteria really want is they want somewhere to live, thrive, and survive. They want somewhere that they can eat and they can multiply. Now, the bad bacteria are going to cause damage to us. So if they actually use us as a host, we're going to either die or we're going to get infected. But the good bacteria actually have a plethora of benefits. Okay, so we actually want more good bacteria. Now, what we do is we provide these good bacteria with a place to live. We give them food, essentially. That's why they're able to multiply. And we basically allow them a nice, comfortable environment to thrive. And in return, what these good bacteria do, I'm just going to go to the next slide and come back. These good bacteria increase gut health. They increase the absorption of nutrients. They increase the breakdown of certain nutrients like carbohydrates. They break down toxins. So if you drink too much alcohol, actually good bacteria can actually help to break that down. It reduces heart disease, it boosts the immune system by making antibodies. All these things are things that good bacteria do. Now, what we want to do is we want to basically make sure that we have enough good bacteria. Also, another good thing is that, remember I said earlier about how we've got so much good bacteria, I use the word good bacteria, that it can actually weigh around 3 pounds. If you were to take all the good bacteria in each and every one of us and weigh it, it'll weigh the size of a brain, okay? That's the same weight as our brains. That's how much we have. So we want to basically hold on to that. Now, if we get rid of that, how many people have antibiotics in the past? Raise of hand. How many people have antibiotics? When you have antibiotics, you destroy the bad bacteria, which is good, but you also destroy some of the good bacteria, which is bad, okay? Because you don't want to kill off the good bacteria. So if you've had antibiotics in the past, ideally you want to have a probiotic afterwards to replenish the good bacteria. And that brings me back to the previous slide. Probiotics are essentially, they are good bacteria. That's what they are. It's not a bad idea to have one every day. If you don't want to have probiotics, then you can have fermented foods like sauerkraut, natto, tempeh, kombucha, things like that. What those foods will do is they will help to feed the good bacteria that already reside in our bodies. Okay,
Jonathan, they don't sell that in Lidl.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. But you know what? Even you don't even have to rely on it. You can just have, you know, those vegetables that I mentioned earlier, those 10 foods.
Yeah.
They also provide, they're excellent food source for these bacteria as well. So you know, you're not just limited to these. You can have healthy green vegetables, things like that. That will help to support your gut bacteria, which is where most of these good bacteria reside.
Mm-hmm.
Any questions so far?
No.
Okay.
Can you get it from yogurt and stuff, John? Because
yes, yogurt as well. Yep, yogurt, the lactobacilli. Have you heard of lactobacilli?
Yeah,
Hello?
that's usually.
Yeah, so yeah, you can get yogurt. Yogurt is okay. You want to obviously go for ideally the sugar-free one. So I'm gonna talk about sugar now, but yeah, yogurt is okay. I would say that you're better off having a more organic source, like if you had a choice between, can you hear the ice cream van? Okay, anyway, so yeah, you can have things like, if you had a choice between yogurt and sauerkraut, I'd probably choose sauerkraut, something like that. So I'm going to say a few words about sugar now. Is sugar good for you or bad for you?
It depends, isn't it? It depends what type of sugar it is. Like probably sugar from fruits, okay, in moderation, I suppose.
Yeah, exactly, in moderation. So if you go on YouTube and type in the truth about sugar, you'll come up with a video by a guy called Dr. Robert Lustig, and it's got 10 million views, okay? And this guy, Dr. Robert Lustig, came up with the phrase, when God invented the poison, he surrounded it with the antidote, okay? Now, what does that mean? What that means is that, how many people, first of all, how many people have ever had sugar cane before?
Yeah.
Okay, what's it like?
Really, really nice.
Yeah, I love
it. How much sugar is in sugar cane?
Isn't it just sugar?
Rich.
Yeah, but if you think about it, most of the sugar cane is just fiber. You can't eat it. There's just a little bit of sugar in it, and like 90% of it's fiber, isn't it?
Okay, I didn't know.
So you basically, what you're doing, you're chewing on this sugar cane, you're sucking. I remember when I was in Montserrat in the Caribbean, and they have loads of sugar cane. And what you do is you spend all day just trying to get that little bit of sugar juice out of it. And the rest of it, you throw it away because it's just fiber. And so the reason I mention that is because what we do is in the West, we take that little bit of sugar, we process the hell out of it, and we make cane sugar from it, the white sugar or table sugar, and we eat too much of that table sugar. And so what I'm really trying to say is that, generally speaking, most of us eat too much sugar. Now, in small doses, sugar is great. If you've ever been to the gym and you don't have energy, have a little bit of sugar, you'll have the energy to work out. If you, as I said before, there's a few months ago, I had a patient with a diabetic coma, gave her a little bit of sugar, and she was okay. So sugar's got its benefits. It's also a great preservative. But as you're probably aware, if you have too much sugar for too long, you're going to end up with a lot of problems. These are just some of them. You can end up becoming quite fat. You know, why is it that people gain fat after eating sugar, by the way?
Heavy in calories?
Yep, it's rich in calories, but why do people get fat, though? That's not the main reason people get fat. Anyone?
Stops the body from processing. Stops the body from processing.
From what?
Slows down burning.
Yeah. It slows down burning, but what happens is the main reason that people gain weight is because of something called insulin and leptin resistance. Okay. Now, who knows what insulin is? Who knows what leptin is? Anybody? Just shout it out.
They're hormones.
There are these hormones called insulin and leptin. And what they do is they are responsible for monitoring how many calories we eat and how full we feel, okay? Now, what happens is that if you have too much sugar, it basically causes chaos within the hormonal system. And you end up with something called insulin and leptin resistance, where these hormones don't work properly. And so they don't send the signals to the brain that you've just eaten, which is why if you eat too much sugar, instead of like, let's say, for example, normally, if you have 500 calories, you feel full up. If you're eating too much sugar too regularly, you can eat 1,000 calories and still not feel full up. If you ever have for example, a McDonald's meal, 1,000 calories, 1,500 calories, you still feel hungry afterwards because the insulin and leptin isn't working effectively. And so you can end up eating too much and not feel satisfied. In conjunction with the fact that the foods you're eating are rich in calories, you end up getting fat. So that's one reason why a lot of people get fat when they eat sugar regularly. There's another thing called a fatty liver. Now, sugar contains glucose and fructose. And fructose is really good for you if you work out a lot, but if you don't work out that much, fructose can actually make you feel really fat, and it can also be quite damaging to the liver. Now, the liver when you have something that only the liver can break down, a lot of people refer to it as a toxin. So, for example, most foods are actually broken down in cells of the body. But if you have, for example, alcohol can only be broken down in the liver. So people refer to it as a toxin. The same with fructose. Fructose can only be broken down in the liver. So if you have too much sugar for too long, you get more chance of liver damage because the liver becomes overworked and it becomes fatty. So you get this fat layer over it, and hence the name fatty liver. Other problems, something I know a little bit about is tooth decay. Basically, sugar helps to feed the bacteria in the mouth called Streptococci mutans and lactobacilli. And these bacteria, as a byproduct, produce acid. And as you know, if you ever tried putting a tooth in Coca-Cola for a day, have you ever done it before when you were a kid? No, I did. Well, not so much as a kid, more like when I was a student. And we had these extracted teeth and we put them in Coca-Cola for one day. And then the next day it was all black and broken down and everything. And it's because, the main reason is because the tooth is mineral. It's a calcified material, and the acid reacts with this calcium to basically turn it into mush. So whenever I do fillings, I'm removing all this mush from the tooth, and that mush is basically caused by this acid produced by these bacteria in the mouth that feed off sugar. Now, without the sugar, you won't get this acid production, which is why we often say don't eat so much sugar, because then you got less chance of tooth decay. Is that all making sense?
Yeah. Yes.
Yeah, then there's cancer. It's a very strong correlation with cancer. If you eat too much sugar, then it can wreak havoc on the metabolic rate and hormones and everything else, and you end up with more cancer. We've talked about diabetes and get insulin resistance, which causes diabetes. You can get premature aging.
Sorry, Jennifer,
Yeah, absolutely.
quick question. Sorry.
Yeah.
I'm just going back a little bit. You know, when we talk about fasting, is that good for tooth health, dental health as well, fasting at all? Do you know anything about that?
Yeah, indirectly, yes. Directly, no.
Okay.
So indirectly, yes, because it boosts your immune system.
Yeah.
You get more white cells. Yeah. Directly, not unless you. And it also depends on what you're eating when you're going through the feeding window.
Okay.
So,
of course, yeah.
Let's say you fast for 16 hours, but you decide to eat snacks like sugary foods for 8 hours, then obviously that's not going to be good. Okay. But yes, it does boost the immune system. And what happens is in saliva, we actually have antibodies in the saliva as well. So it can help in that way. In regards to aging, did you know that sugar can make you older?
Yeah.
It messes up your skin and it causes acne and all that. And it can cause something called advanced glycation end products, which is age. It's a mnemonic age, which is ironic because then it causes too much sugar can cause inflammation. inflammation in the arteries, which means that you've got more chance of atherosclerosis. If you remember earlier, I was talking about fructose. Fructose metabolism happens in the liver. Too much fructose is directly related to uric acid production. Uric acid is associated with gout. Yeah, so you have too much sugar for too long, you've got more chance of getting gout. So all these things can happen when you eat too much sugar. But do you know what the biggest problem with sugar is? What's the
It's
biggest
hidden.
problem?
It's hidden in lots of food. We don't even realise
Absolutely.
sometimes.
Absolutely.
I think that's a big problem.
Absolutely.
Alcohol as well. Alcohol's a lot of sugar in alcohol.
One second,
I think, especially like beer and stuff. But yeah,
absolutely.
I just think we just don't realise how much sugar we're eating because it's in a lot of sauces and even like baked beans and things like that, you know. Yeah, but that's what I think. That's the dangerous thing about it. We don't even think that we realise. We think, oh, there's not much sugar in that, but there is. Not sugar's not just about eating sweets or drinking fizzy pop. There's a lot more hidden things to it as well, isn't it? Not that straightforward.
Loads and loads. That's what I mean with processed foods. And I talk about this in my big book. I talk about it quite a lot, actually, about the last 50 years of diet in the food industry. And in the 70s and 80s, we went into that low fat thing. Low fat foods became commercially viable, but the problem is they taste like cardboard. So what they used to do is they used to add loads of sugar to these low fat foods in order to make them palatable, to make them tasty. But they used to market it as low fat. So people would eat these low fat foods thinking it was healthy, but what they were doing is eating way too much sugar, and it was hidden sugars. And then there was something called, I think it was called high fructose glucose syrup. And this was basically even sweeter than sugar and more damaging than sugar because it had a lot of fructose in it. So what happened is after 10, 15 years, there was a massive rise in the amount of heart disease and all the problems that I just mentioned. They went through the roof in the 80s and 90s. People were eating less fat, but they were also eating more sugar. And 10, 15 years later, they were dying from heart disease and all these kind of problems. So you're right. I mean, it's very hidden, and a lot of processed foods are full to the brim with sugar. So you've got to be aware of that. But anyway, the biggest problem with sugar is actually addiction. Addiction. Sugar is extremely addictive.
It's more addictive than crack cocaine. Does everybody know that?
No, it is. It is. There's a part of the brain called the nucleus accumbens, or the pleasure center, and stimulated by the same drugs as cocaine, nicotine. All these drugs stimulate the same part of the brain as sugar, and especially when you haven't had sugar for a long time, and then you start eating sugar again, it creates a massive surge in dopamine. And dopamine, as you know, is like a pleasure hormone. The problem with dopamine is that, let's say that you have one candy bar every day for around a month. Towards the end of the month, that one candy bar will not release as much dopamine as it did in the beginning of the month. So you need to have more candy bars in order to get the same response. And that's the problem with sugar. In other words, you need more sugar in order to satisfy you. That's where the addiction comes in. So these are all things to be aware of. I would check out Robert Lustig's video on YouTube if you really want to learn more about that, or even better yet, buy my book.
Check out a couple of questions.
Essential Guide to Sports Nutrition. I talk about it in a lot of detail in that book.
Yeah, check out a couple of questions.
Couple of questions. Let's have a look. So, is it normal to crave sugar from time to time? Absolutely, yes. And if you check out a guy called Aaron Aragon, he actually said, check out, you can Google him. He said that basically, if you're going to be undergoing a diet and if you're going to be cutting out sugar in your diet, then you should treat yourself to a small sugar snack every day in order to kind of keep those cravings at bay. But you have to have a lot of willpower not to eat like more than one candy bar a day or something like that.
Yeah, it's good to eat things like a bit of dark chocolate as well, rather than milk chocolate.
Absolutely, yes. So you want to wean yourself. It's like drugs, really. If you're taking like crack cocaine, you want to take some methadone before you go completely cold turkey on it. And I think it's the same with sugar. If you're eating too much sugar, you want to go onto something like maybe take stevia as an alternative, or dark chocolate, which has got less sugar in it. Things like that, and wean yourself off it very slowly. If I have low mood, I crave sugar. Well, exactly, that proves my point. It stimulates the pleasure center in the brain. So obviously, if you move, that's why a lot of people they eat too much sugar and they're feeling a bit low, because it boosts your dopamine levels and serotonin levels and all that. Any other questions about sugar? No, okay, shall I move on, yeah?
Yeah. That's big.
Okay, protein. This is a big one. Protein. Protein's a massive topic. What's the big deal about protein? It's been in the media a lot. A lot of people are promoting protein bars and things like that. What's so good about protein? Can anyone tell me? The answer is on the screen, by the way.
It keeps you fuller for longer.
Muscle growth.
It does. Yeah, it keeps you fuller for longer. Yep. I mean, if you imagine if you're hungry and try eating a whole chicken, see how far you get with that. You know what I mean? So
Yeah, it's also good for muscle growth as well.
Yep. Now, this bit is really relevant to people who train a lot. Protein is absolutely essential for life. You'll die if you don't get enough protein. Now, protein is important for skin, hair, nails, cells, hormones, enzymes, antibodies, blood clotting factors, neurotransmitters, and energy, ATP. So without protein, we'll die. It's quite simple as that. Now, when it comes to exercise, which I'm going to talk about a bit later, and we're going to strongly emphasize the importance of exercise. What you want to do is you want to make sure that you're eating enough protein, because you know what will happen if you don't eat enough protein and you exercise? Even if you don't exercise, you know what will happen?
You lose muscle.
You'll lose muscle because because basically, let's say that you're not eating enough protein. The body will break down the muscle that it already has, which has got a lot of protein in it, and it will use that protein to make antibodies and blood clotting factors and hair and all these things which are very important for survival. So in other words, it's more important that you survive than have big biceps, which is why we want to make sure that you get enough protein in your diet. Now, if you're training and you exercise a lot, we recommend an average of 1 gram per pound body weight. How much I need might not be the same as how much Wendy needs or how much Lucy needs. So obviously how much I need is going to be different to everyone else or vice versa. So I say an average 1 gram per pound. You weigh yourself. If you're 200 pounds, you need 200 grams a day on average. If you're not vegan, then good sources are basically meat, fish, and eggs, things like that. If you are vegan, then you want to look at lentils, soy, tempeh, beans, quinoa, chickpeas, hemp seed. Even vegan protein supplements are quite good. But as I say, general rule of thumb, 1 gram per pound. Any questions about protein? Water. Water. This is a big one as well. How much water do we need? Is there a set figure? When I was a kid, my mum used to say, Steph, you still there?
Yeah, yeah.
Remember what mum used to say?
Water. Remind me, what's she saying?
She used to say, this is my brother Steph. She used to say, make sure you have 8 pints of water every day.
Yeah.
But the problem is that how much I need might not be the same as how much you need or how much Wendy needs or how much anyone else needs. So there's no way we can actually say have this much per day. But what we do say is if you're urinating 7 to 10 times a day and you have clear urine, that's usually a good sign that you have enough water. So what's so good about water? What's so great about drinking water?
It flushes out our bodies. It helps to flush out our bodies.
Yeah, it helps to flush the kidneys, helps to keep metabolism nice and high because it increases blood flow, which basically means that it gets rid of toxins much more readily. Now, removing toxins basically means that the body becomes more efficient and the immune system becomes stronger because the immune system involves removing toxins. The best example I like to give is if you're in a traffic jam, yeah, the cars aren't moving very quickly because you're in a traffic jam. The water basically enables the cars to move quicker. It enables the blood to flow more efficiently. So it's not a sluggish blood flow you have. You've got a more efficient blood flow, which helps to reduce headaches and boost immunity and helps the muscles grow. Muscle is 70% water. So if you imagine training in the gym when you're not saturated with water, your gym workouts are crap. You won't be able to lift the weights very well. So you want to make sure you drink a lot of water and the muscles become saturated, they work more efficiently. So let's say, make sure you drink enough water. That's a good general guideline. 7 to 10 times urination a day, and that's really what we were looking for. Any questions so far? All making sense?
Yep.
Yes. No. Maybe.
Yeah.
Can I move on? Huh?
Yeah.
Okay. So the last thing we can talk about supplements. Supplements. How many people take supplements?
No.
How many people need supplements?
I take supplements.
Yeah. Do you need them?
The mica oil is, I reckon, is good because it's good for your joints and that. And as arthritis runs in my family, I'd rather, you know, do that. And I do take vitamin D, which was recommended by my doctor. And I just take a vitamin C. I take orange juice, fresh orange juice most days, but occasionally I'll take a vitamin C tablet as well. I'm not 100% sure of it, but I just do it anyway.
Okay, that's fine. That's good. So what we want to do when it comes to supplements is very much a personal thing. There's no one rule for everybody. You know, I might need a supplement and Lucy might not need a supplement. So the best way of identifying whether or not you need a supplement is by seeing your GP and having a blood test. However, as a general rule of thumb, if you look at NHS guidelines, they strongly recommend taking a vitamin D supplement if you're going to be going through lockdown because you don't expose to sunlight. How many people know about vitamin D and sunlight? Have you ever heard that sunlight increases vitamin D production? Have you heard that?
Yeah, that's right.
Why is that? Why does that happen? It doesn't make sense, does it? I mean, think about it. Why would it that standing out in the sunlight, all of a sudden we get more vitamin D? Why is that? Do you know why? What we have is we have cholesterol on our skin. And what happens is you got UV light from the sunlight, and it basically reacts with the cholesterol to produce vitamin D on the skin, and the vitamin D on the skin is absorbed into the blood. Now, the problem is that when we're on lockdown, we're not going outside that much. So we're not exposed to as much sunlight. So hence, we don't produce as much vitamin D. So the NHS have actually said it's not a bad idea to have vitamin D supplements. What's so good about vitamin D is that it's great for the immune system. It boosts the immune system like crazy. And it also helps to make testosterone. And as you know, if you've read any of my books, you'll know that testosterone has a plethora of benefits, including muscle growth, fat loss, and increasing energy levels. And that's the same in men and women. It's not just men. Okay, so vitamin D has a lot of benefits. Vitamin C, well, when's the last time you met someone with scurvy? You know, I mean, most people tend to get enough vitamin C, but it's not a bad idea having more. There's no harm having more vitamin C than you need. Omega-3, we've talked about that before. If you're vegan, take the vegan algae. You can get that from Holland and Barrett and places like that. If you're not vegan, then make sure you're having at least 2 or 3 portions of fish a week or cod liver oil every day. And that's it. Vitamin, also the other thing is cod liver oil also contains a lot of vitamin D as well, in case you didn't know that. Any questions so far?
No.
So we've covered the diet now. Now, if you get all this stuff, if you really focus on this diet, you'll be okay. You'll be so much better off than I'd say 90% of people out there, and that's the fact. If you focus on eating more plant-based foods, fasting regularly, eating more omega-3s, getting a fair share of fermented foods, tempeh, probiotics, cutting down on sugar, eating enough protein, eating enough fat, drinking enough water, considering supplements where need be, you will be 95% healthier than I'd say most people out there, okay? Or should I say much healthier than 95% of people out there. And that's a fact. That's an absolute fact. What about exercise? Exercise, good, bad, ugly?
Yeah, exercise is good.
Exercise is good, isn't it?
Well, yeah, in moderation.
There's a very renowned professor and neuroscientist called Mark Tonopolsky. He actually coined the phrase, if exercise was a drug, it would be the most valuable one ever developed. And that's very true. And I'm going to talk about why that is, because exercise has all of these benefits, makes you more fit, increases muscle mass. And if you ever check out a lady called Dr. Gabrielle Leon, in the nutrition world, she's very, very, very well respected. She coined the phrase, muscle is the organ of longevity. Okay, without muscle, we can experience a hell of a lot of problems. As you get older, you go through something called sarcopenia, and sarcopenia basically means that you lose muscle, around 2% muscle over the age of 30 every decade, and that number goes higher after the age of 50. So basically, after the age of 30, you start to lose muscle as you get older. So what happens is that the muscle is associated with, loss of muscle is associated with diseases like diabetes, heart disease, things like weight gain, weak joints, things like that. So we need to make sure that as we get older, we maintain that muscle. And the best way of doing that is through exercise, regular exercise. Exercise basically is essential. Blood flow, It's very important for blood flow. It raises your immune system. It boosts your immune system like crazy. Okay. And I'm going to talk about why in a minute. And how many people have exercised regularly and feel better afterwards?
Yeah, definitely.
You do, don't you? Yeah. And that's why, because your mood gets better. I'm going to talk about that as well. It increases life expectancy. So you live longer for obvious reasons. You lose weight as well, which is quite obvious as well when you exercise regularly. What's the best type of exercise?
Consistency.
Yep, exactly. Nikima hit the nail on the head, consistency. You want to do high intensity and low intensity, ideally. If you're new to exercise, you want to wean yourself into HIIT. Who knows what HIIT stands for? High intensity interval training. Yeah, weight training and things like intense training. And then you can also do low intensity exercise like walking. Ideally, you want to do both, but what you want to do is also avoid overtraining. Now, how many people, I know someone on here has actually done this. How many people have actually trained to excess and end up feeling really weak and tired at the end of the week? Yeah. If you train like crazy every single day of the week, what's going to happen is you're just going to break down, and one day you're going to wake up and not have energy to do anything. You'll feel weak, you'll look weak, you won't be able to function properly, and that's because you're overtraining. And when
Too much for good thing's a bad thing, Jonathan.
Totally, and especially when you're doing HIIT. So what I usually suggest is do a few days of HIIT, that's great, but you also want to do walking as well, low intensity exercise, so that you have time to recover, okay?
It's funny, Jonathan, actually, talk about HIIT. A lot of people seem to be doing that Shaun T, Insanity again.
Yeah,
he was popular
a lot of injuries.
Yeah, it was very popular a few years ago, but a lot of people were getting injuries, like you just said. But now he's come back again. I don't know, but I've done his workouts, and it's very intense. It's very insane, insanity. Yeah, but like you said, I think that's another extreme. It's a bit too well. I mean, if you're really fit, you can do it, but I think it's just really difficult to do those type of HIIT workouts. But I can do. There's other people that can. There's like what's it called? And Sydney Cummings, she's quite good, and is it Heather or Helen Robinson? She's quite good as well. Low intensity.
They're really good. They are really good. And I think that's the thing. It's never a one rule for all. You got to like see how you feel, see what works for you. Whatever you do, as long as you do something, and that's the main thing. Even if it's just walking around the block, something is better than nothing. If you can do HIIT, that's great. But walking around the block every day is fine as long as you do something. What will happen is over time you'll be able to do more and more and more. But if you start off with something, then you'll get somewhere. Now, I also want to say a few words about the mind, the brain. This is a lot of people don't understand how beneficial exercise is for the brain.
Oh,
so I'm just going to say a few words. Hello?
What is good for depression?
Absolutely,
yes.
Yeah.
Yes, it is good for depression, yeah.
Absolutely. There's a guy called Daniel Wolpert, he's a neuroscientist. He said that the purpose of the brain is to produce adaptable and complex movements. In other words, he's saying that from the dawn of time, there's a very strong association between locomotion and the brain activity. Look at the sea squirt. There's this organism called the sea squirt. Now, the sea squirt is a very simple organism, lives in the sea, and its only purpose in life is to find a rock to attach to. That's it. It just needs to find a rock to spend the rest of its life. Once it finds that rock, it eats its own brain. Isn't that crazy? So this basically goes to, it doesn't need to move anymore. That's the whole point. So it's like, what's the point of me having a brain if I don't need to move? The better example is the koala bear. Koala bear, many, many years ago, the koala bear would move around looking for food. And then it came across the eucalyptus tree. And when it found the eucalyptus tree, all it would do is literally eat leaves all day from this eucalyptus. And it had an infinite supply of food. So it never used to go anywhere, just to stay on this tree and eat leaves all day. And over the years, their brains have actually become physically smaller as a result of that. So they're not moving as much. So what's the point I'm making? There's a powerful connection between brain activity and exercise. That's what I'm trying to say. What about human beings? How does it affect humans? What happens when you get cold? You shiver, right?
Yeah.
What happens when you get hot?
Sweat.
And what happens when you exercise?
You sweat.
Your brain works more effectively. Okay. So there's a very strong correlation between exercise and brain activity. Back in the day, the only time we used to run around is because we used to chase things or run away from things. It's a fight and flight response, okay? In today's day and age, we exercise because we need to exercise, okay? In other words, we don't have to run away from lions today. So the only reason we exercise is because we need to exercise, okay? We need to go to the gym, look after ourselves, because most people live a sedentary lifestyle. So when you exercise regularly, you improve your mental focus, you improve your memory, you improve your learning capabilities, and you improve your mood. There's something called BDNF, brain-derived neurotrophic factor. Now, this is something that basically increases your memory, so you remember things much better, and you can learn things much better. You produce more BDNF the more exercise you do and when you fast as well, okay? Someone said earlier it produces, improves your mental focus and mood. Am I right? Yeah. Okay, so you produce more dopamine, and you also produce more serotonin and more norepinephrine. All these things improve your mood. We almost finished now. Is everyone still there? Everyone still awake? Yes, no, maybe? Yeah. Yeah, so we've got another 5 minutes now. It's almost finished. It's been a very long presentation, so I respect the fact that you're still with us. Exercise is really good for reducing stress levels. We produce a lot of cortisol when we're stressed. So it helps to reduce stress levels over time. And that also helps us remember things more, because when the cortisol levels are very high for a long time, then you produce, your hippocampus, which is part of the brain that's involved in learning and forming new memories, that becomes less effective. So when we exercise regularly, cortisol levels go down, hippocampus activity goes up, so we'll be able to produce more memories. So basically, the thing that you really got to remember is that exercise is really good for remembering things, increases your memory, increases your learning capability, and it also increases your mood, okay? And it also reduces the chance of dementia for the reasons I've already mentioned. And there's this guy called John Ratey. John Ratey wrote a book, bestseller called Spark. In this book, he basically got all these students, school students, to exercise more regularly. And the people who exercise more regularly got better exam results. Okay, so that tells you something. I talk about it in my book, Essential Guide to Bodybuilding. And the last thing I'm going to talk about is sleep. How much sleep should you have?
Should be 8 hours a night, shouldn't it? Yeah.
Absolutely. And the reason you need to sleep along is if there's a million studies have talked about the benefits of sleep. Optimizes muscle growth, repairs damaged tissues, optimizes brain function, burns more fat, and you have more energy during the day, and you perform better in the gym. And the take-home message is everything that you do normally from day to day, you do much worse when you're sleep deprived. Okay, so 7 to 8 hours is good. And the last thing actually I want to talk about is social isolation. Now we've kind of gone a little bit off topic, but we were originally talking about how to remain healthy and fit during lockdown. Social isolation is probably one of the biggest concerns we have. Am I right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So you want to basically make sure that you are using platforms like Meetup, like you're reaching out to friends, family, that you're engaging in some kind of online activity. If you're kind of locked up all day, you're going to go through depression and stress, and all this is related to cortisol levels going up. So make sure that you kind of interact with people. Reach out to your GP if you're suffering in silence. Obviously, that goes without saying. And that's it, everybody. So we're going to have a quiz in a minute. I'm just going to put everything together before we do the quiz. Eat more plant-based foods, especially green vegetables. Fast regularly, at least once a week. Eat lots of healthy fats, especially omega-3s. You want to make sure you get your fair share of probiotics and fermented foods. Reduce sugar intake. Eat as little sugar as you can. Eat more protein. Drink lots of water. You should be urinating 7 to 10 times a day. Ideally,
How many times a day?
7 to 10 times a day, yeah, on average. And you should have clear urine. Like if it's too green, too concentrated, it means you're not drinking enough. You want to do both high and low intensity exercise, ideally. But if you can't do that, then at least do low intensity exercise. Any exercise better than no exercise. Focus on 7 to 8 hours of sleep every day, and try to socialize and keep in contact with friends, family, and social networking. Thank you, everybody. Thank you for putting up with me for nearly 2 hours. It's been almost 2 hours, okay?
Really?
So you've done really well. You've done really, really well. Now, I'm gonna do a quiz for you. This is a time-limited quiz, so you've only got 30 seconds per question. So no cheating, okay? No cheating. No Google, nothing like that. And I'm gonna ask 3 questions, And instead of shouting out the answer, I want you to use the chat, okay? So,
Where's chat?
Chat, where is chat? Are you ready for the first question? You've got 30 seconds to answer this question. Now, as I said, if you think you know what the answer is, just send it to me privately. And if it's right, then you're going to get a prize. Does that sound fun?
Yeah, okay, just finish the host. Yeah, okay.
You've got 30 seconds. Text me which answer you think is correct. 20 seconds left.
Read out the question.
What's the question?
What's the question?
Oh, sorry, can you see it?
Yeah, read
No.
out.
We're on the chat box, so we can't see it. Can you read it out?
Is it okay? Sorry, is it not screen sharing?
No, because we're on chat.
So they won't be.
Oh, right. Okay. Okay. Well, how many calories are in each of the following? 2 Snickers bars, 1 Big Mac, 6 eggs. I mean, the calories numbers are the same for each of these foods. 4 bacon strips, 1 bagel and cream cheese, and 5 apples. Is answer A 200 calories? Answer B 300 calories? Answer C 400 calories? Answer D 500 calories? Answer E 600 calories? And answer F 700 calories. No cheating, by the way. No Google. Okay. How many calories are in each of the following? 2 Snickers bars, regular sized Snickers bars, 1 Big Mac, 6 eggs, 4 bacon strips, 1 bagel and cream cheese, and 5 apples. Is it 200, 300, 400, 500, 600, or 700 calories? And if you send the answer to me privately, and then at the end, I'm going to mention who the winner is. Next question, okay? Okay, this guy standing next to me. What's his name?
What?
You can text me the answer. The guy standing next to me is very famous, but what's his name?
Oh, we can't see it. Where is it?
I'm giving you 20 seconds. Shall I give you a clue?
Yeah, go on.
You have to have his full name, but the second name is somewhere on the screen. Okay, I'm going to move on. Third question. Most people can either burn loads of fat without building new muscle or build loads of muscle but gain some fat as a consequence. However, there are exceptions. I want you to name 4 groups of people who can successfully gain significant amounts of muscle and at the same time burn loads of fat. Shall I say that again?
Yes, again.
Most people can either burn loads of fat without building new muscle, or they can build loads of muscle but only gains a little bit of fat as a consequence. However, there are some exceptions. I want you to name 4 groups of people who can successfully gain significant amounts of muscle and burn loads of fat at the same time. This is quite a tricky one, this one. And by the way, you have to name all 4 groups. You can't just name one person. The last question is a little bit tricky, to be totally honest. Okay, and that's it.
Who won?
So I'm going to go over the answers now. I've got everybody sent me an answer to each question, which is good. I'm going to go over the answers with you now. So the first question was, how many calories are in each of the following? Answer D, 500 calories. Okay.
Yay.
How about the second question? Who knows who this guy is? I tried to give you a clue. If you look on his t-shirt, it says Cutler. Okay, I'm going to give you the answer. It's Jay Cutler. He's 4 times Mr. Universe. He actually had a look at my book. He actually liked my book, so that was quite a compliment. But anyway, that's who he is, Jay Cutler. And the third question is, when you train, when you gain weight and you're training and you're lifting weights, you're going to gain muscle, but you tend to gain fat as well. And when you lose weight, you're going to lose a little bit of muscle, but you're going to lose hopefully more fat than muscle. There are some people who can actually gain muscle and lose fat at the same time. Does anyone know who they are? There's 4 groups of people.
I said pregnant people, but
No, not pregnant people. No.
I say like athletes, like marathon runners.
Yeah, but that's not really. I'm talking about just a general group of people. Like, it could be you and me. It could be anybody.
Swimmers?
No.
Sumo wrestlers?
No. So I'm going to tell you now. The people, if you've never done any weight training before, and you're brand new to the gym, then you can actually gain, as a man, up to 25 pounds of muscle in your first year. And at the same time, you can lose fat. After that, it becomes harder. For women, it's around 12 kilograms of muscle. Was it 12 pounds? Sorry, 12 pounds of muscle in your first year. So you can basically gain a lot of muscle in your first year of training if you've never been to the gym in your life. If you're obese, then you can also gain muscle and lose fat at the same time, especially if you're new to the gym. So if you haven't really been weight training before and you start weight training, you can actually gain muscle and lose fat. If you take steroids, then you can actually gain muscle and lose fat. So technically, you can fast for most of the day, lift heavy weights, you'll grow muscle, and you'll also burn fat at the same time. And if you've been out of the gym for a year or 2 years, and then you get back into training again, you can actually gain muscle and lose fat at the same time. So that was a hard question, that one. Nikima, you've actually won something.
Really?
Well
Yeah.
done, Nikima.
Nikima, I'm gonna send you your gift. If you text me your email address, I'm gonna send you your gift afterwards. Yep. And I'd like to say congratulations. Thank you for putting up with me for 2 hours. It has required a lot of concentration. We've covered a lot of topics. I think you should all give yourself a round of applause because it does require a lot of concentration. And as I said, we have covered quite a lot. So you've done really well to stick with me through the last 2 hours. And I'm just going to do a little bit more self-promotion. These are the books that I've written. Okay, so feel free to head over to leangains.co.uk. You can check out those books a bit later on. I've just had a message from somebody. Shall I send it? Yes. Yes, actually, yes. I think that's a good idea. Send out the discount code to everybody who's attended. Is that okay, Steph?
Yes, that's cool.
Steph, yeah, that's cool. We're going to send out a little discount code. If you are interested in any products from the store, then you will get a discount because you've attended today's webinar. Any questions? There's a little 5-minute Q&A I have at the moment. So if there's any questions, shoot.
No, I think you explained everything really well, John.
Oh, thank you very much. Is that Tasha?
Yeah.
Brilliant, brilliant. You can join the evolution. Head over to the store today. And I think I'm going to call that a day.
Oh, that's perfect, Jonathan. Thank you very much.
Let me just turn this thing around. Here we go. So, yep, thanks for attending. I'm going to end the webinar now. Okay.
Okay,
so,
thank you, Jonathan.
I'll keep you all posted for the next one.
Thanks, John.
Thank you. Thanks,
Bye.
everybody. Speak soon.
Bye.
Take care. Bye.